It's time for this month's book special, and there is still one more King book to receive the regular 19 Reasons treatment from me. So, let's combine the two. Here are 19 reasons to read Holly. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Dave Musson, at Dave Musson on Instagram, and this is a place where I talk to you about all things Stephen King. Have a look in the description for links to my newsletter, podcast, some of my own fiction, all of those other things. And hey, if you enjoy this video, stick around, subscribe, there's loads more to check out. Now, usually, at the moment at least, I'm going through the movies and adaptations of Stephen King's works and giving you 19 reasons to watch each of them. But the reason I started this channel was to go through all of his books and give you 19 reasons to read each of them. And even though I have reviewed Holly, I reviewed it when it came out last year, and you can check that review, link in the description or link up there, I haven't done the 19 reasons to read it yet. So we're going to correct that today and scoop up this month's book special at the same time. Now, if you're worried about spoilers, there might be reasons that will spoil this, but I will cluster them behind a spoiler alert. So at that point, you can either bail if you need to, or you can skip to the outro using the timestamp down below. So as I said, if you want more Holly coverage, you can check out my review. This, of course, came out in 2023. And, well, it's the only book at the moment that I haven't given the 19 Reasons treatment to. So let's change that, shall we? Here are 19 reasons for you to read Holly. Now, you might think that your enjoyment of this one will ultimately come down to how much of a fan of Holly Gibney you are. So she is a character who we met in Mr. Mercedes, and then we kept meeting throughout the rest of that trilogy, so Finders Keepers and End of Watch, and then she appeared in The Outsider, and then she appeared in the story If It Bleeds. Holly is her first book where she is the lead character. Now, obviously, if you are a Holly Gibney fan, you're going to enjoy Holly. That almost goes without saying. But what's interesting, I think, is that even if, like me, you're not particularly a big fan of Holly Gibney, you can still get a lot out of this book. It's a really competent, well-paced, well-plotted thriller. Stephen King's storytelling chops are so well refined at this point that he just hooks you in and keeps you engaged page to page, chapter to chapter, without the need for lots of cheap cliffhangers, as you often see in these crime books. So it's definitely worth a read, even if, like me, you're not that into Holly Gibney. So what's the hook in this one? Well, Holly is still a private investigator, and she is hired by Penny Dahl to investigate the disappearance of her daughter, Bonnie. And as Holly digs deeper into the case, she comes across two academics called Roddy and Emily Harris. And they knew Bonnie, and it appears they may know a little bit more about her disappearance than they might be letting on. And as we continue to go through this case with Holly, well, things get more and more shocking. So, similar to the Mercedes trilogy, we actually know more about what's going on here than Holly does. A lot of the time in the story, we're watching Holly piece things together and get to where we already know. Somebody in my review of Holly helpfully pointed out that this is called a howdunit rather than a whodunit. And that might be frustrating for some people. Some people might want the thrill of discovering things with the main character, but it didn't bother me too much. I thought it was pretty well done here. So many of you will be pleased to know that Holly does feature quite a few horror elements. It's probably King's most horror-filled book since The Outsider from 2018. Now, it doesn't go quite to the levels of what he does in that book, but there are some very effective and unnerving scenes in here, and there's some great horror that takes place off-page, again, which I found particularly scary, just because your imagination fills in the blanks. There's also an element of black comedy to Holly. It's no spoiler to say in Holly that those two academics, the Harrises, there's also an element of black comedy to Holly. It's no spoiler to say that those two academics, the Harrises, are the bad guys in this. And it's also no secret that King has something of a checkered past with academics. So for him to sort of turn the tables and make these academics the bad guys, I found pretty funny. The real divisive point of Holly, and the thing that really seems to decide whether or not somebody likes this book, is politics. And it's King's politics, but they are channeled through Holly Gibney. So in the story, which is set on the backdrop of COVID, we see Holly sharing her views on Trump, on MAGA, on anti-vaxxers, on COVID itself. And those views are all King's views. and they are laid on pretty thick, like page after page after page. Now, as it happens, I share very similar political views with Stephen King, and they didn't bother me that much, but it does seem to be that people on the other side of the fence really don't get along with those views appearing time and time again. And I get it, right? If it's something you are very much in disagreement with, you don't want to see it page after page after page after page. What I will say is that we're all humans here. We're all allowed different opinions. So one thing is not better than the other. And these views being in there does not necessarily make it a bad book. You need to kind of see past those and actually read the story. Or just put the book down and go and do something else because life is too short. But just be aware, if you're of a different political persuasion to King, his views do come out quite a lot in this book. Now, those views did garner quite a lot of criticism in the reviews of Holly, and King, he doesn't care about that criticism. He was asked about it in an interview with Rolling Stone, and I'll quote exactly from him because it's worth listening to him. So he said, "I think that a lot of people, particularly people on the other side of the COVID issue and the Trump issue, are going to give it a 1-star review on Amazon. But all I can say to those people is, knock yourself out." Yep, he's Stephen fucking King. Why should he care? So something I'd hoped for with Holly was finally getting to understand what it is about Holly Gibney that he keeps coming back to her. Why is she so special to him? And why does she keep popping up time and time again? And this book did not do that. If anything, it made me less interested in Holly, which is quite an achievement, I suppose. But I'd be very interested to hear in the comments from anyone who it really did click for them and they really do understand Holly now. Let me know. Now, surprisingly in Holly, particularly compared to her previous appearances, the Holly Gibney isms are really quite dialed down in this one. Like, I was definitely taken aback by how few Gibney-isms there are in here. So yeah, surprising, but fracking welcome. Now, there's an element of the stakes not being particularly high in this because before this book even came out, King told us he was working on another Holly fracking Gibney story. So it's no spoiler to say that Holly makes it through this one. But how unscathed is she? What state of mind is she in at the end? How well is she doing? I'll leave that for you to find out. So something I highlighted back in my review, and I want to bring in as a reason to read it again, is that it feels like King is slowly getting better at how he treats his black characters. We get 2 characters in this book, Lakeisha and Imani, and they are introduced not through the colour of their skin. They are introduced by references to an afro or talking to a white lady, those kind of things. And that seems like a very small thing, but it's progress for Stephen King because you don't have to go back very far at all to see where black characters, the only thing about them that we seemingly need to know is how black their skin is, what black thing their skin colour is like. And it is front and centre of how they are introduced and how they are driven through the story. Not the case in Holly. So it's a very small step, but it's a positive step. I feel like King has been very aware that he has, to be kind to him, not been great at writing black characters. The black characters in Holly, they feel like a step in the right direction. Very conscious, I'm a white guy saying this, so I might be talking complete bullshit. But from my point of view, comparing to how he's written black characters previously, it does feel like an improvement. All that being said, we get a lot of head talk, sort of thoughts from the character Emily, and she's talking about pickaninnies and little blackies, black bitches. And we've got Jerome Robinson making an appearance, and his password for his computer is shizzle, which is an eye roll. But generally Jerome is toned down a bit. Again, I think overall an improvement, and you can kind of argue that these particular things, particularly Emily's character, are to highlight how bad a character she is. But really, do we need to see all of that language on page again and again and again? Probably not. So lastly, before spoilers, I would actually argue here that this book would be stronger if it was not a Holly Gibney book. Now, I know it wouldn't be able to be called Holly, but I think it would be more engaging and more interesting if this were just a new character who were investigating this case. Like, it doesn't add much to the Holly Gibney legend, and at the same time it's such a well-structured, well-paced, well-written story, peppered with lots of shocking moments. Like, the story is what drives you through. It's not Holly that keeps me engaged in this. So I think it would have been better without Holly. But let me know what you think in the comments. Okay, from this point in, going to be talking about a few things that might spoil the book for you if you haven't read it yet. So consider this your spoiler alert. You can either leave all together here, or you can use the timestamp below to skip ahead to the outro. But otherwise, stick around because I've got a few more reasons for you to read Holly coming right up. Right, spoiler alert is done. I can finally mention the twist. The fact that those aging academics are freaking cannibals. And the way King reveals it to us is so expertly done. He kind of hints at it a little bit and you're like, nah, that's not where he's going. And then we get confirmation of, yeah, actually that is where he's going. And wow, like it really was a jaw-dropping moment while I was reading that. I would say it's probably one of his most effective reveals of a hook, of a twist, probably in the last decade of his books. There's loads of examples in this book of King showing that he has still got it. He can still get under your skin. Just picking one off on page 314 in my edition, just right at the end of this chapter where Roddy has got Bonnie Dahl clamped to a table and he's thinking all of these things, thinking about how he's getting too old for this shit basically. And then we just end it with this. When his heartbeat finally slows, he clamps her wrists and her ankles. Then he sets out the pans for her organs, takes a scalpel and begins cutting off her clothes. And then, like I was saying earlier, the horror is off page. Our imagination fills in the blanks and it's not pleasant. There are also some great moments in Holly where King shows he can still get nasty as well. Obviously we're talking about cannibals here, so that's not surprising. But yeah, refreshing that this far on in his career, he can still shock us. This one also proves again that he definitely can write endings. And I'm talking less so about the ending, the official ending, I guess, where Holly is contemplating retirement and then picks up the phone and takes on another case. I'm talking more about the ending for the families of the victims of the Harrises and the dark, fucked up closure that Holly is able to get them. She finds out what happens to them, so those families can at least sort of lay that to rest. But what happened to them is that they were killed and fucking eaten. Like, imagine that as your closure for the rest of your life. Imagine living with that every day. Fuck. So we see Barbara Robinson pop up again in this one, and I liked seeing her again. She definitely has the potential to become a more interesting character, but for me I could have done without the poetry side of things. Fine to have her interested in poetry and dabble in it herself, but to make her this unbelievable poetry prodigy and have her win this prestigious competition, no, not needed. Let her fail for once, please. So lastly, my overall thoughts on Holly haven't really changed since I did my review back when it came out. It's fine, it's bubblegum. It's very enjoyable while you're in the moment, while you're there, but the flavour fades very quickly and it doesn't really linger in the memory too much. But it's a perfectly enjoyable read, and bubblegum's fun, right? This book's fairly fun while you're reading it. But, you know, for me it doesn't really add much to the Holly legend, but it's a well thought out, well written, crimey type thriller with some horrific moments and some excellent scenes here and there. And it's going to sell bucket loads. It already has sold bucket loads. It will continue to sell bucket loads. It will get made into a series or some shit like that. It will go on for a long time. It's definitely worth checking out, and it's kind of mid-tier King, which at this stage in the game I'm fine with. So there we go, 19 reasons to read Holly. Good job I didn't drop that, wouldn't it? Else I would have had to edit it out. Let me know your thoughts on Holly. Have you had a chance to read this since it came out? Are you a fan? Are you not a fan? Are you a fan of Holly Gibney? Do you want more Holly stories? I think we're getting them, so you're going to get some anyway, but do you want more of them? What was your favourite scene in Holly? All of those kind of things. Let me know in the comments. And also check out in the description, you'll find links to my newsletter, to my own fiction, to the Constant Writers podcast, and some other stuff as well. But more than anything, thank you for coming and checking this video out. If you enjoyed it, I've got more for you to have a look at. And hey, if you're not already subscribed, maybe consider doing that, and then you won't miss any future videos. Next time we're back on the movies and adaptations trail, and we're covering something that King was so keen to get right, he just went and did it himself.